Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I wanted to talk about creating a sense of depth in your tracks. And if you think about what reverb and delay are intended to do, you can imagine that they are quite powerful in creating a sense of depth in your tracks. So I'm going to look at certain parameters on a reverb plugin and kind of explain how you might use them to make a sound closer or to make it sound further away in a mix. So here is my original sound. And here is one kind of reverb on it. And here's another. You can hear that with the first reverb, it sounds a lot closer than it does with the second reverb. So if you think about in the real world, if you have a sound that is pretty close to you, you are going to hear that sound pretty quickly. It's going to come to you pretty quickly, and then after that, if you are in a really open space, you'll hear the reverb a little bit later. And that's what this reverb example basically does. And this is done using the pre-delay. So if I turn the pre-delay up, you can hear that the background kind of gets further away. And if I turn it down, the background kind of gets closer. So the pre-delay plays a pretty big role in creating a sense of depth. And so in the other reverb, you can see that I have the pre-delay set to 0. So this sound is kind of put in with the reverb. And I've also turned the dry level down to make it sound as if it's further away. So if I turn this reverb on, you can hear it just sounds quite a bit further away. And so the dry to wet ratio is another huge factor in whether a sound sounds like it's closer to you or whether it's further away. If you have a lot of reverb on a sound, compared to the dry signal, such as this version of the clap, it really helps push it in the background, especially with that pre-delay set to pretty much 0. But if you have a lot more dry signal than you do the wet signal, you can hear it stands out. It sounds like it's a lot more upfront. And for pushing the reverb itself more forward or more back, using the high cut and the high dampening option can help you with that, just pushing the reverb itself more forward or more back. And basically the more high frequencies you have, the more close that the reverb sounds. But the less high frequencies that the reverb has, the more pushed back it will be. And this goes for the sound itself as well. If I were to kind of EQ this a little bit and cut the higher frequencies off of that clap before it gets to the reverb, it really helps push that back as well. And you can also use delay to help push it back. And this is just to delay the sound itself, not really to use the delay effect. So basically you turn the dry signal off, you turn the feedback down so that it only hits once, and then you just offset it by a few milliseconds. So if this sound were to play at the same time as a different sound, this sound would be a little bit delayed. And if you think about something far away, it's just going to take longer for that sound to get to you than it will take for a sound that is much closer to get to you. So kind of delaying the signal just a little bit. You don't need to delay it a lot. Like this is kind of overkill. But just delaying it by a few milliseconds can also help push it more to the back, because it's just a little bit behind the sounds that are more close to you, and the way we perceive things, that makes us think that it's further away. So you can use EQ to filter off some of the highs of a sound to really help push it into the back. You can also have a delay on it to just delay the sound a little bit compared to your other sounds, to push it back as well. And on the reverb, if you have a decent amount of reverb with relatively little dry signal and very little or no pre-delay, that will help push it back as well. And then if you want to push the reverb back itself, you would just kind of adjust the high dampening and the high cut to remove some of the higher frequencies and make it sound further away. And so on this version of the reverb, the sound will sound much closer, but the reverb still sounds fairly far away. And you can make the reverb sound further away by increasing that pre-delay. Or you can make it sound a bit closer by decreasing it. So these kind of ideas are mainly going to be helpful if you are really into ambient, really atmospheric, awesome, cool sounding spaces and just creating environments for your music to exist in. So you might not use it in your typical popular dance track or anything, but if you're into more atmospheric music, it's definitely good to know these techniques. You can definitely play around with that and create some really awesome atmospheres. And definitely do some research to find out any other techniques that might be available to you. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that helps give you a little bit of an idea of different parameters you can adjust and different things you can do to have sounds sound like they are closer to you or further away, and just kind of change the atmosphere and position different sounds within that atmosphere in your track.